Why do you save seed?
It's being a part of preserving and transmitting to future generations the plant treasures that our ancestors have worked with and enjoyed, and in turn shared with the rest of us. So it's part of the transmission of basically heirlooms, which just happen to be plants. I mean, I'm surrounded by family heirlooms, which my father made, but plant heirlooms are, after all, it's something that you can not only enjoy and learn about, but you can enjoy eating. And I picked garlic because back in those days, there was no such thing as garlic seed. And that's where Mason comes in. Mason is really a seed saver.
I've only done, I've saved garlic seed once. So like that's where you pick out the bulbils and you save like the true garlic seed. But mostly I just grow them out every year.
So for people who aren't used to thinking of garlic as something you can save seeds from, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so usually garlic produces asexually, so like it clones itself pretty much. So the bulb will form cloves. You can plant the cloves separately and they'll form new bulbs. And then you can also do the bulbils where you can plant them and they'll basically have the same genetics as the original one. But in between the bulbils, there's like the flower structures. So with, I think, some purple stripes and a lot of wild ones that John collected, you can actually pick out the bulbils at a certain stage. And it allows like the flowering parts to mature. And depending on which variety, yeah, you can get seed to produce. And then the seed will actually be genetically different than the parents.
And why garlic for you? What brought you to garlic?
Well, I mean, I've been gardening pretty much since birth. We eat a lot of garlic. I originally probably got into like more collecting when I met Curzio at the Harbor Market in Kenosha. So I met him there probably when I was like 12 or 13 maybe. And he kind of like, introduced me to how garlic wasn't just what you see at the store. He showed me like some 4-clove porcelain varieties, and he introduced me to seed savers too. So then, I got some garlic from him. So that was like the second year I think I grew garlic. And then from there I've just been adding on to the collection, I guess.
The reason I started collecting garlic in the first place, this was a little before I joined Seed Savers, but when I read the material about Seed Savers, I said to myself, I would probably want to grow a plant that doesn't cross with anything else, because at that time, say 1984, garlic seed basically didn't exist. There were a few people, like in Japan and in Kyrgyzstan, that had some garlic seed, but it was almost unheard of. My saying is, the only thing scarcer than garlic seed is hen's teeth. But so I decided if I was going to get into Seed Savers and collect something and collect more varieties of something, garlic would be a good choice because it wouldn't be crossing up. And then not long after it was about the time that I joined Seed Savers, I was in touch with the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and I met Dr. Phil Simon, who was at University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he is a PhD geneticist. He has a big lab, and he was doing genetic work on onions and carrots and then garlic. And he was finding some garlic plants that would produce seed. And so I got interested in the possibility of garlic seed, and that led eventually, many years later, to Mason here, who is carrying on and is, I think, probably has got a few garlics that he got from me.
Yeah, quite a few. Most of my collection comes from John.
So John's talking about, not having to worry about crossing, and you're talking about intentionally collecting seed that will not be the same as the parent. Tell us about what you will do with those seeds.
Well, so you have to, for them to germinate, they have to go through a cold period. But mostly I'm just looking for things that interest me, that plants that grow, differently than the parents. You can taste them, just go by a lot of different qualities, basically. And yeah, basically, another thing is when you save seed from garlic, supposedly over time it'll get more fertile. So if you do more generations of seed saving and planting, then eventually you'll be able to produce a garlic that theoretically will form a bulb and seed readily. So that's kind of my goal. I mean, I have different goals, and basically whatever interests me, I'll keep growing and share and that type of thing.
So how did the two of you meet each other?
I think
We met out at a campout. It was about 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think my mom was in line for lunch, and I was doing something or talking to someone, and I think she met Colleen first? I think she met Colleen first, Joel's wife.
Colleen Girardin.
Girardin, yeah. And then they basically started talking, oh, what are you here for? And they found out that, oh, I'm interested in garlic, and she said, oh, my husband, he wants you to meet someone. So then they basically, Joel and John and a few other people, I think, we went into the wonder room at Seed Savers, and we were talking.
Visitor center.
Yeah, the visitor center. And we were talking there for it must have been at least three hours.
While.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
And so that's how we hit it off.
So you two met at the conference, and I know that you've seen each other at follow-up conferences, but have you also maintained a connection outside of the conference?
Yeah, we email each other, or have in the past a little bit. Him and Joel were sending me, I think, a lot of articles. Joel especially, he was sending me a lot of winemaking recipes and stuff, and we've been in communication.
The biggest thing that we've done together was a few years ago. Mason and his mom came down here, and I was sharing my then collection, which was a lot smaller than what it was at the high water mark of my garlic growing. But I gave him, I don't know, a lot of garlic. And so we sat over there at my dining room table, and I trotted out all my bags of garlic and shared them, and the rest is history, as they say. Yeah,
so I planted half of all the varieties here, and then I took half of all the varieties at home, and then I've had those since then.
I eventually, given my physical limitations, I had to cut way back. At one point in my garden, I had over 200 named varieties of garlic. And after the garlic expedition in Central Asia, when we brought back a lot of alliums, I decided that, and I think it was my wife who had something to do with, like, you simplify your life, and I cut way back on the amount of garlic I was growing, because trying to maintain like over 200 different varieties was too much work. I sold my collection to Ron England, and so he's been maintaining them and passing them on.
So Mason, John's talking about how much work it takes to maintain that many varieties of garlic. I don't know the number for you. How many varieties do you have?
I believe I'm around 110, give or take. So yeah, it's a lot of basically just keeping track of where everything is and making sure everything's labeled. And I use a map, and then just from every point you do anything, if you're taking them out of the field or putting them in, or when you dig them up, I basically put each variety in a bucket, and I'll have a whole bunch of buckets down the section, and I'll throw a tag in there with them. And I'll string them up in the barn and then staple the tag onto the string. So then basically the tag has to be with that garlic through the process. You have to make sure you don't lose it. And then you put them in the bag, and I just alphabetize everything and then do it all over again. It's just a lot of labeling and keeping track of it mostly.
It's a lot of work. You have to have real enthusiasm to do it, and to do it right, because I found after many years of life, it's easy to be wrong. You got to be smart, because it takes knowledge and dedication. Also a thirst for knowledge, because you never know enough.
Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to start something like this for themselves?
Don't try to just take on whatever your ambitions are right away. Maybe just pace yourself a little bit, and make sure the seed stock you're taking to plant is relatively clean. I've gotten stuff that was infested, and that was like the first garlic I put in. It was infested with nematodes, I think. So yeah, you want to kind of visually check your garlic and inspect it to make sure you're only planting the clean, biggest cloves pretty much from healthy plants.
Yes, if you want to do anything, start small, because the old admonition I remember from my mother, don't bite off more than you can chew. Sage advice for anybody.
Is there a moment that you remember that was either markedly exciting or tremendously exciting?
I can say probably being in Central Asia in 1989 on this expedition and seeing garlic in the wild. It's kind of like, I've always been interested in origins. Where does something come from? Whether it's a plant or a word. Or in the case of Chicago, like Chicago wasn't always where it is now. So anyhow, but that's my other fanaticism, which explains all these books here. So yeah, I think Central Asia, because seeing garlic growing in nature, as it has been for millions of years before people came along, that was definitely, You would remember that for the rest of your life. The thing about garlic is that in the wild, it seems to seek out generally unfavorable environments because, and this is true of most alliums, is alliums are not good competitors with other plants. And I think the simple reason is that allium roots don't have root hairs. So they don't have a large amount of surface area, however small it may be, to absorb nutrients. And so weeds, which do have root hairs, and anybody knows this, they will outcompete garlic. So Mother Nature has figured out that if she can get garlic or other alliums into some place where they may not have weed competition, then they can survive. And so in nature, we found garlic, it would usually be in a dry stream bed in a mountain, in the bed of a river, which during the melt off of all the snow would have a lot of water and would promote growth. But then the garlic plants would be way down in the subsoil, in the let's say the stream bed. They're down there and they're in soil which is moist. But the rocks on top of them, maybe 3 or 4 feet deep, are kind of dry. It takes a lot of work to dig up allium, especially garlic bulbs. So what you do is you go over and you collect the bulbils from the top of the plant, which is growing above the rocks. So the bulb may be down maybe 3-4 feet down below, but you don't have that much time and energy to dig it up, so you collect the bulbils. And that's true of a number of alliums.
Mason, what is it like to have such a wealth of knowledge to draw from as you're working?
It's pretty overwhelming to try to incorporate it all into what I know. But yeah, he's just an abundance of stories and experience, and yeah, just really has a whole lifetime of well-rounded, just whatever you want to know, John probably knows it.
So what does it feel like to you to have someone like Mason, who's a younger generation, carrying on some of the garlic growing?
It's what every seed saver hopes for, because you want somebody else to carry on the work that you have done and to build on it. And this is really important. So he's maintaining all this. And by the way, the stuff he's going is the best of the best. There's a lot of garlic out there that doesn't make the cut to the varsity. So what we're growing is, they're all varsity varieties.
Yeah, I was just going to say I've really liked the Yearbook varieties that I got from John. Well, I got half from John and half from the USDA. But the tops, they grow at least like past my waist. The stapes will get, well, how tall do they get? I don't. They just grow so much more vigorously than
the wild garlic. I've grown some wild garlic from Uzbekistan that was collected over there in 2012, I think it was. And they collected about 20, pretty near 30 varieties. And anyhow, some of those garlic plants produced leaves that were 44 inches long. That's a big plant. Now the bulbs themselves are not necessarily enormous, but the plants are huge. I mean, 44 inches long, and the scape will be. The scapes have gotten as up to 6 feet tall and maybe a little bit more. But the garlic that's been in cultivation for a long time usually has acquired a virus that doesn't kill the plant, but it kind of stunts its growth. So garlic that's been in cultivation for a long time will not be that big, and the leaves will be maybe, 20 inches long, something like that. But this wild garlic, and I've got a bunch of it right out there, it's from Uzbekistan. And I just have a whole, it's a big dense planting of it. So, and the garlic in nature, the bulbs are dinky. I mean, they'd be the size of a nickel. But once you take that plant material and put it in good garden soil and eliminate weed competition, stand back and look out, because you're going to get some big plants.
Are there other plants that you've tried to grow with garlic?
Well, this year I'm growing sweet potatoes right along the edge of a garden to hopefully keep the bindweed from creeping in, because sweet potatoes pretty much grow more vigorously than bindweed. So, and I did that last year and it seemed to work good.
The one problem with garlic is it's about a 9-month process from when you plant your clove or bulbs or whatever until you harvest. And so your garden space is tied up for 9 months. So if you can find another way to use it, it's a good idea. I've never really done that. I just would rather turn the garlic loose and let it grow. And I always have a lot to share with other people. Because what good is knowledge or garlic if you can't share it?